Hello and welcome back to Barry Island Books and Art Bayside Book Chats. It's our second season. So last year during the pandemic, we started this as a way to reach out to family and friends and the people who love our store to stay connected to the book world. It's an extension of Wednesday's wine night, which during the summer we have some live entertainment, some live music. It's also a night to come in and have a more casual approach to the store and to talk books, current events, and whatever might be on your mind. So welcome back to Wine Night. When we started this, I was thinking of FDR and the fireside chats. So we decided to call it the Bayside Book Chat, and later on we're going to go over to the corner and sit down in a chair and we're going to talk books and things that are in the current news and connect them all together. Also last year, because this store has a great appreciation for nature, we had a show called The Nature of Things, which we'll be starting that up on weekends. Coming soon to you. Parker will put a post out there to let you know when that's starting. Behind me, if you've been watching during the pandemic, everybody on their Zoom shows have bookshelves of books behind them, make you look smart and worldly. So, of course, we're in a used bookstore, and no matter what angle we pick, we've got some bookshelves behind us. I've got my Got Art t-shirt. We are Barry Island Books and Art. We have a lot of art in here, and then I always try to wear a thematic t-shirt, and we're big believers in science, and of course science has had a big part in helping us get out of this pandemic. So that's my thematic shirt of the night. And now we're going to go over and sit down and talk about the things that we talk about in the Bayside Book Chat, and some other things which we usually include a book list. We might do a book report, and sometimes we even throw a little trivia in at you. So here we are back in our chair where we did a lot of our book chats last year. This is kind of my FDR fireside chat seat, and if you watched our episodes last year, there were about 12 of them. You'll remember that my daughter Phoebe had drawn up some signs for me as reminders of some things to talk about our store. Is this Instagram, Parker?
Yeah.
Right, so Instagram, Parker does a great job. That's a great spot to see some pictures of, quotes by authors and some latest product that we have here in the store. YouTube, if you have that, is kind of, we do these posts on Facebook and YouTube. I'm just no order to this. If you need to mail a book, we can mail to you through the U.S. Postal Service. Obviously, you might already be watching this on Facebook, but if you have any questions or inquiries, reach out to us there. My wife, Marnie, will get back to you. Of course, anytime you're on social media, you need a little support, so please share with friends and talk us up and give us a thumbs up and like us if you can. Any way you want to share the love of this store, go ahead and do so through social media or let us know. And then a big part of this store is recycle, reread, reuse. We're a used bookstore primarily, and of course we are environmentally conscious, so whatever we can all do to keep books out of the trash and take care of our planet would be appreciated. So we're in a bookstore, and it's a wide world of books. There's countless books and authors. We're strong believers that every book is written with a purpose, whether it's a children's book or a 1,000-page science book. There's something that the author is trying to convey, whether it's a feeling, an emotion, or a fact. So that's what we try to cover here when we have our book chat, and of course that then relates to current events. And if you've watched the shows last year, then a lot of things we talked about were about the pandemic and politics and racial injustice, and we talk about those things. So whatever's happening currently in the news, we're going to try to find a way to find a book that speaks to it. And authors, they get renowned, and then a subject matter may come up and documentaries get written about it. So in our family, we have a cousin who was a year ago, was on the History Channel with a biography on Washington. His name's Edward Lengel, and he wrote this book, and of course we have it. And currently, Parker and I, we have one more episode to watch. We've had a lot of other things going on, so we're a little bit behind. But there's been a documentary series on Lincoln, and we've enjoyed that a lot. So we have a lot of books on Lincoln. As mentioned, we have a very large history section. Last year in the chats, we talk extensively about U.S. Presidential history and leadership, and Lincoln comes up a lot. And we have a lot of books on Lincoln, whether they are written in the last 5 years or maybe something was written 20, 30 years ago. Being in used books, of course, we're not limited to what came out this year, but we have hundreds of years of history of books to review. So that's the documentary part of it as it relates to presidents. But lately, there has been a documentary done on Ernest Hemingway. And we have a lot of Hemingway here, one of our top requested authors, and we try to carry as much as we can. And of course, Hemingway had a very diverse life. So you've got his fiction, you have his nonfiction about his years in Cuba, in Key West, in fishing, in hunting, in Africa, in Wyoming when he was a young boy. But he was also a war correspondent, which led into his books, A Farewell to Arms and For Whom the Bell Tolls. He was a war correspondent, and that's where he, got his impressions and his notes. So he also wrote some books that were articles and short stories, and this was titled Byline Ernest Hemingway, where he's covering a lot of his war observations. He saw 5 battlefronts, and he, I believe, in the U.S. Army earned the Bronze Star. So he knows what he speaketh of. As we know, Hemingway, this book was in the first Barrier Island Bayside Book Chat photo, which we just showed you. This is a very popular book. This is Hemingway on fishing. And in his years in Paris and in Spain, The Sun Also Rises and A Movable Feast were 2 popular books. And then, as we mentioned, from his war observations of the Spanish-American Civil War came A Farewell to Arms and For Whom the Bell Tolls. This happens to be a book club edition. And getting back to, again, his stories of the Spanish Civil War, he also had a book, The Fifth Column. And recently we had a couple authors who passed away. And one of them was Larry McMurtry, famous for a top 100 American fiction book, Lonesome Dove, who my father-in-law said was one of the greatest books he ever read. So we have a lot of Larry McMurtry, and we also have other Western authors lately very popular. My wife, I know, is watching a series on TV right now. There's some series and movies based on the writings of C.J. Box. Larry passed away. C.J. Box, I don't believe, has. And then recently we had a gal pass away, Beverly Cleary, who wrote a lot of children's books, including Ramona, and including one that I read when I was young, and then read to my daughter Phoebe, where you have to learn to go to imitate the sound of the motorcycle that the mouse uses to bring the aspirin to the baby boy in the hotel. A Mouse and a Motorcycle. Rest in peace, Beverly Cleary and Larry McMurtry. So every year, the dictionary and encyclopedia organizations will come up with what they call their words of the year. So last year in 2020, I wouldn't call it one word, I would call it 2 words that come to my mind, and that would be fake news. And it's always bothered me a lot because we all have the ability to do our own education and research to kind of sort out what is real and and what is fake. That's why we go to school. We have a chance to self-educate ourselves, and with that, it's up to all of us to read not just one newspaper or watch just one news channel, but to read books, talk to people, read other sources. Maybe read a source that you think portrays the other side and you don't agree with. Get a varied amount of information and then use your intellect and your instincts to separate the wheat from the chaff to find out what the truth is. So fake news is really bothering me because a lot of it's not that hard. Some things are pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious that you don't drink bleach to get rid of coronavirus, and you don't stick ultraviolet lights down your lungs. Science can go a long way. Science, like history, yes, sometimes it needs to be revisited, rethought. That's the debate. That's why authors put their name on the book, and they put out a book and they offer it up for debate. Things can be discussed and corrected, but you have to start from an honest base, and you have to learn those things for yourselves. But there's a lot of information out there for us, and that's what a used bookstore provides. We have a lot of books for you to read and to do your own research. So fake news, as you can tell, has always bothered me. One guy on the radio that's bothered me until he passed last year was Rush Limbaugh, because a lot of stuff that came out of his mouth was fake news. He was not a very factually based. It was his own instincts and the way he wanted to portray life, but it doesn't mean it was factually based. Maya Angelou has a famous quote, which in essence pretty much says, trust what you see. Trust what you see and hear, and trust what is the truth. And when you know it, believe it. So when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And when they do it, believe them the first time, because sometimes that's, the truest form of somebody. We have a lot of books in here to cover history. And again, as mentioned, they're going to be open for debate, and it's up for you to decide what is truth or not. After the 9/11 happened, there was a book written, a commission report. And after the space shuttle crashed, they did one studying the crash of the space, when the Challenger blew up. And I don't know if we're going to get around to writing a book where both political parties put their best foot forward and try to find out what really happened on January 6th. Currently, I kind of feel like America is letting a lot of things slide under the rug, and we're not paying full attention to what really occurred. But my guess is that there's going to be a lot of books written about it, whether Congress can come together and put a report or not themselves. I don't know. But there will be a lot of authors who are going to write about it, and then history will be written. And there's a lot of authors in this store who do this. And Jared Diamond wrote a Pulitzer Prize winning book called Guns, Germs, and Steel. So guns, a big discussion point in this country. Guns had a lot of part to do with how the white man was moving west. The common expression is how the West was won. Well, it was guns. And when parts of the American Southwest no longer has the indigenous people, including Mexicans, that used to inhabit it, a big part of that was guns. So there is a Pulitzer Prize winning book on that. And if you noticed, in the title is the word germs. So pandemics have had a big part of the unfolding of world history. Eric Larson, one of the most popular history authors currently writing, one of our most popular authors, will pick a subject matter and go in depth and write about it. On TV, you will see a lot of this gentleman. He writes about demographics and sociology in world history. Thomas Friedman, a great biographer, especially a student of presidential history, John Meacham. Along the same genre, Doris Kearns Goodwin and she wrote this one was Team of Rivals, winner of the Lincoln Prize, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln. And as mentioned before, presidents will get written about, as our cousin Edward Lengel wrote about Washington. And currently, you have Joe Biden. Books will be written about him. He currently is reading a lot about FDR, as mentioned with our naming of the Bayside chats, the Great Respect for the Fireside chats. He is reading about a gentleman who got us through the Great Depression and World War II by, as Biden would say, straight from the shoulder, trying to tell the American people the truth, but the American people then have to put their onus into figuring out what the truth is. And about Trump, there'll be books written about him, and a lot of them are written by people who are really close to him. Mary Trump wrote Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. That's from a relative. Disloyal, a memoir, the true story of the former president's attorney to President Donald J. Trump, by Michael Cohen, one of his most loyal employees. And Fire and Fury, Inside the Trump White House, by Michael Wolff. And of course, we're going to have Bob Woodward, is famous for having Trump talk to him about his impressions of the pandemic. So a lot is going to be written about Donald Trump, and a lot will be written about Joe Biden, and a lot will be written about the next president of the United States, whoever that he or she may be. So last year, in our episodes, we covered 100 books from PBS's The Great American Read, which I think was done about 2018 or 19, and they polled American readers, not what other people, meaning publishers and authors or historians, thought were the greatest books written, but what the American reader thought were the greatest 100 books, and we covered those. Last year, we did not get to 91 through 100. We dropped off, and when we started up this year, I was going to do 91 through 100. If you remember last year, and as we're about ready to do with this year's list, I would hold up the book, and I would usually have 8 out of the 10. But when I did 91 through 100, I don't think I had one, which surprised me. But then it kind of made that a little embarrassing and pointless. So I decided I would skip last year's 91 through 100. And the list that we're going to do for you this year starts off with 24 books that are the list of the compilation or the average of many different websites and people's opinions on the greatest books ever written. I think you're going to recognize every title. We currently have a company called Out of Print, which is one of our gift lines, and we have these tote bags that have a lot of these titles right on the bag. So I'm going to put that aside, and we're going to start right from the top. And I may have mentioned this last year. If not, you don't need me to tell you. If you are into books, this book is often referred to as America's greatest novel, and it's by Harper Lee, and kind of ties into current events in a way. It is a great way to maybe stimulate your senses when it comes to racial injustice. And the Pulitzer Prize winning novel is To Kill a Mockingbird. Hemingway had a great friend, but not till the end, from what I understand. I haven't seen the documentary yet, but I know a little bit about it, that they weren't friends to the end, but when they were, Hemingway would send his writings off to this author, not to add on or to fluff up his writings, but to critique it and to eliminate useless words. and hopefully, I guess this author played a part in Hemingway's success, and that is F. Scott Fitzgerald, and his greatest novel is The Great Gatsby. Then we have two sisters. Charlotte Bronte wrote Jane Eyre, and Emily Bronte wrote Wuthering Heights. A highly controversial book, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. It is controversial in the sense that there has been some infamous folks in history who said they have read this book and went on to do not so good things. Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. A book that was discussed a lot last year, so popular that I don't have a copy of the actual book to hold up. I have another book by the author. We talked a lot last year about dystopian authors trying to give us warnings on today's society. And we talked a lot about Ray Bradbury, 1984, and George Orwell's An Animal Farm. George Orwell, An Animal Farm. Mary Shelley, Frankenstein. I do not have Catch-22. This is the sequel to it, but Joseph Heller's Catch-22 was in the top 12. This is a book by the great American humorist in top 5 American authors. This is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This also has a tie-in to racial injustice. This was written in the 1800s. Mark Twain grew up in Missouri, but he obviously as a writer became friends with a lot of Northeast liberal authors. And in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, you will pick up on some points that Samuel Clemens, i.e. Mark Twain, is trying to make as the raft drifts south with the Negro Jim with Huckleberry Finn. The N-word is used over 200 times, and it is very strong. Recently, I was asked to do a book review, which will be coming out in June on a YouTube channel called The Literary Gladiators, where 4 of us discuss this in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. 11th of the 12, Lord of the Flies. And 12th, which Parker is currently reading for school and is going to give us a book report on, is Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. So if you followed us last year, we usually end the episodes with some little tidbits and maybe some trivia. So this year, we're going to do trivia. I usually do like 10 questions, but tonight's going to be one question. And what we did last year was if anybody responds to us on Facebook with the correct response, and give me your name and contact info, we will put your name in our credit box for a $5 credit. The very first person who contacts us through Facebook with the first answer, and when I say this, try not to look it up on Google. Try to do it the old-fashioned, honest way. But if you can be the first person to respond with the correct answer, then you get a $25 gift certificate to the store. Tonight's trivia question is a one-word answer, and it is a name. It is the name of Hemingway's boat, but is also a nickname for his second wife and for a lead female character in For Whom the Bell Tolls. What is the name of Hemingway's most famous boat? And that's the trivia. And then another thing that we did last year is we had a theme. Last year, because we started off with Wine Down Wednesday, it was wine. And during the course of the year, we had a lot of references and stories about wine and some quotes. This year's theme is going to be beer. And because today is the 5th of May, it is also known as Cinco de Mayo. And Cinco de Mayo was, for you that do not know, it's a Mexican holiday, and it marks the Mexican army's victory over France at the Battle of Puebla during the Franco-Mexican War in 1862. So our first beer this year will be a Mexican cerveza, Modelo Especial. And I don't think they say it in Mexico, but they might say Bio con Dios. In Costa Rica, they have an expression which is like Hawaii's version of aloha, which is pura vida. So happy Cinco de Mayo, and I thank you all for watching. You can go back and watch all of last year's shows on YouTube and Facebook. I think we had about 12 of them. Coming this weekend, we will return to the nature of things. And I thank you all for being observers and patrons and lovers of used books.